There's no such thing as equal outcome. People make different choices and therefore the different outcomes. When I hear people, with all due respect, when I hear people talking about like the gender pay gap, there's no such thing, because when you take into account the choices that some women make to do with like childcare and stuff like that, it kind of solves itself. So I don't believe in that personally.
Yo, my name is Tito. I'm a strategist and I'm a creative community builder from East London.
My name's Aaron, 27 years old. I'm a freelance photographer, teaching assistant.
Do the rich deserve their wealth and status?
For the most part, yes.
How can you hold that belief?
It's not a perfect system. I know that some people do get things they don't deserve sometimes, but at least the capitalist system allows you to earn your way to that wealth rather than just piggybacking off of other people.
So if I was to tell you that the majority of rich people in this country, that the most common form of wealth transfer is from parent to children, and that's how we have entire generations of rich people in this country descended from aristocracy, slave owners, who are industrialists back in the 1800s. Like, why would you still hold a belief that doesn't actually in practice mean that regular people like you and I can ever enter those ranks?
Do you think that it's only rich people who are entitled to transfer their wealth to their children? If you were that rich, for example, and you had hundreds of millions in your account, would you rather it go to your own children, or would you rather it go to somebody else that you don't know?
In my personal belief, I believe that wealth should come from hard work and from like value. However, I think that's a belief that capitalists proclaim to hold. But in practice, the people that are working the hardest are aunties, it's the cleaners, the nurses, the whole generations of people on strike right now. I think that my kids should work for whatever they earn.
You'll find that a lot of millionaires and people who have lots of wealth actually want their children to understand the value of money. For example, you look at Ronaldo. He said that he wants his child to he used the word suffer, he didn't with Piers Morgan a couple of years ago. He said he wants his child to suffer a bit because he grew up in a very poor area of Portugal, and he grew up and he had to earn his way to where he is right now. So I'm not quite sure that I understand where you're coming from, and I get that, but even from my perspective, I don't think that all millionaires think that their children will not appreciate the value of money as time goes on. In fact, if anything, people who come from nothing and build their way up understand it more than anybody else.
Ronaldo's a very rich and powerful man, so like, he's exactly the sort of person that in an ideal system, there'd be a lot more equality. I mean, he plays a sport, he does it really well, fantastically, but there are people, I feel like hundreds, thousands, millions of the common people who are doing crazy things in their day-to-day life, working back-breaking labor, that deserve to earn a lot more. So even the idea, could you say something like suffer?
When you say deserve, what do you mean by deserve?
The labor that gets unpaid and unrespected and marginalized in our current society, in a capitalist society, I feel like people deserve to do a lot better. The nurses who are on strike right now, the ambulance workers, the firefighters, the paramedics, who isn't on strike under this Tory government? I mean, everyone's on strike right now. These are people who have been left behind as the rich have gotten richer, as the kids of the rich get millions and get to privileged schools, become judges, and continue to govern this country as the governing class, while ordinary people like all of us here, we continue to just kind of do our thing, and we have this delusion that one day we might become rich as well.
Do you think that it's possible for someone like me, for example, to attain that wealth? At least with capitalism, it gives you the chance to do that. With socialism, everyone's on the same level, as in it takes away the incentive to do better in the first place. What is the moral basis for taxing some incomes at higher rates than others, and is excessive taxation simply a penalty for success?
Oh, I love this question. Do you know why I love it? Because I think what we believe in is success right now is completely flawed. I believe success in a capitalist system is social. In fact, most success is social. Everything that you can do, if you build a business, then you're employing people that were educated in state schools. You're using your roads to get your workers there through roads that are maintained by the government. The air you're breathing is regulated by codes and conducts. There are all kinds. The police defend your property, who are publicly maintained. The army defends your country, publicly maintained. Everything you can do, building a business, we see the earnings and the profits from it go to a private individual because of their idea, even though every single part of the infrastructure that led to that idea was socially made and publicly funded.
It's still based upon the idea that you think the government is the answer to everything. The government comes in and says,
but I didn't say the government, I said
I know, but that's what it is. Socialism, as in it's a group of people deciding on behalf of everybody else, this is what we're going to do, and I mean, I don't understand that concept. Do you think that individuals or entrepreneurs or people who have these ideas have an idea of what's best for individuals rather than the government itself?
Can I tell you something?
Okay.
I love entrepreneurs. And if we had a system more closer to a Scandinavian model, where there was much more economic equality, where people weren't born in poverty, where people weren't born like so far back behind in the rat race compared to some of their rich private school peers, then we would have so many more ideas. Do you know how many businesses and hustlers we have in working class communities? That if they had the capital that some of our rich peers had, we'd be able to start businesses and do well and like build for the economy.
You're using the word capital. The capital doesn't really have much value if it's being taken by a forced state and redistributed as it sees fit.
Did you go to uni?
I went to uni.
And I imagine you had a student loan, right? That only really became a thing like 20, 30 years ago under a Labour government.
A Labour,
but like the NHS,
working class, but you're driving up university fees.
All these victories for the common people were built by socialist movements, and they serve to benefit. So these taxes that you're saying are taken from people, they go to everyone and they give you that head start so you can start a business. And then when you're all starting your business or when you are contributing your ideas to the society, pay it back. So the next generation of kids, the next generation of aunties, the next generation of uncles, whoever it is, can also go and prosper.
I'm against the idea of excessive taxation. I'm not saying there shouldn't be a flat tax for everybody to pay.
But a flat tax is crazy.
I'm talking about excessive, as in, where's the line between wanting people to have the chance to do well and making sure that people actually do well? Because there's no such thing as equal outcome. People make different choices and therefore the different outcomes. When I hear people, with all due respect, when I hear people talking about like the gender pay gap, there's no such thing, because when you take into account the choices that some women make to do with like childcare and stuff like that, it kind of solves itself. So I don't believe in that personally. But I think there's a line to be drawn between making sure that people have equal opportunities, which I believe in itself is not entirely plausible, and making sure that people actually achieve the same outcome. Because the truth of the matter is, if you give too much to people, people tend to become complacent. If they know they're going to get a guaranteed income, no matter what happens, they'll take it for granted. And so the value decreases because, okay, well, you're just going to give it to me. What's the point? Have I earned that? Have I earned the right to do well? No, I haven't.
When has capitalism worked for the average person?
For the fact that, for example, I'm not homeless. I live, compared to the previous generation, of quite a comfortable life. I'm saving money. I've decided to stay at home for the time being and save over the years. What you're saying about rent and stuff, I understand that to a certain degree. I get it. But I think that it's given me a chance to kind of make something of myself. It's given me a drive to strive and do better. It makes me recognize the value of money. It gives me the chance to go out and improve the quality of my life.
I hear that, but I respectfully disagree. And I would say it to you, like, Aaron, you're quite socially conscious. You're aware of like what's happening in society. And I feel like I wonder what you feel like when you see, because you said you're not homeless. That's great. But I mean, there's a lot of people that are. And you said like you currently live with your parents. I wouldn't say that's a sign of success of this economic model. So when I think of what capitalism has done for the average person, I would say that when we look at even our democracy, at every level, the super rich have the power to influence our politicians to make decisions on their behalf. That's why we have tax cuts for the rich, non-dom status that even our prime minister was using.
I understand that, yeah.
So when I look at the average person, if the prime minister can get away with paying tax, what about us? If I get a tiny little, if I don't pay my NI one time, I get screwed over. When I look at what capitalism has done in terms of like everyday people like you and me going to workplaces where we have bosses who are horrible people and having no say in the matter, being underpaid, being lacking workplace rights. You mentioned the gender pay gap. Like when it's women not having the sufficient, if they get pregnant, in America, they don't even have like paid sick leave or long-term maternity leave. I'm not quite 100% sure on the UK's policy there. But it's there's so much that capitalists and these rich people have that we don't have.
Well, I mean, I would say the difference between capitalism and corporatism. Corporatism is essentially when the government gets in bed with these big companies and they can actually run riot. I don't agree with that. But capitalism is just the idea of that I have something of value, I'm going to sell it to you, and in return I get something. So it's a product or service in terms of capital. That's all that capitalism is. For example, I'm a semi-professional freelance photographer as well. When I get paid, I go and take photos for people, edit the photos. That's all it is. I'm not in bed with the government. I'm not saying that, you know, the government has to make me do this, this and this in order for me to do. That's not how it works. I'm not cheating my way to it. How can you be a socialist despite currently benefiting from capitalism?
So let's just angle that. How can I be a socialist despite currently benefiting from capitalism? I don't think I benefit from capitalism.
Yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are.
Are you looking at my clothes?
I'm just looking at the fact that you are not homeless and you're alive and everything here.
But
are
so is that capitalism?
Would you
that did that
describe
for me?
yourself as being in poverty?
I wouldn't say I'm in poverty at all.
I mean,
So is that capitalism that did that? Are we attributing my where I am right now to
the whole
capitalism?
point of capitalism that it gives people, I've said it before, it makes people want to work for other people and provide you something.
I am able to be where I am because socialists fought and died, and trade unions fought and died and racial activists fought and died to get me where I am. It's not if we had it the way of capitalists, we would be. You wouldn't be here.
I mean, you say trade unions. They're fighting over money. Essentially, that's what trade unions.
Yeah, because they want the money that workers made and contribute to society to be given to
therefore,
them in a
therefore,
proportional share.
therefore, you will acknowledge that the money has an objective value.
Of course,
this
money
is why
has value.
Exactly. Where does that
But
money?
who debated that?
Where does that money come from, though?
It comes from the value of the work that people put into society, but it's not evenly distributed to the people that actually do the work versus the people that just make it through finance or through being born into inherited wealth.
Well, it depends upon.
And also, what I was going to say before is that trade unions fought and died to get us where we are. The NHS that I've used when I've been injured, when my mum uses a lot, it was fought and died for by generations of socialists and activists in this country. And we thankfully, after World War II, were able to get an Aaron Bevan and a radical Labour government to actually build the NHS. The schools weren't. You think schools were free before? The schools that in Nigeria people pay school fees. In this country, schools and education and university, the right to university for working class and black kids, etc., was fought and died for by activists. The pension that we have wasn't guaranteed. The 5-day work week wasn't guaranteed. Every single one of these victories that I can sit here and be like, wow, my life is okay sometimes, was fought and died for by socialists. If capitalists had their way, this country would be a gutter. How do you justify economic inequality in Britain and around the world?
Choice. In a word, I know it's a bit more nuanced than that, but in a word, I would say choice. Choice in history. If you want, people make different decisions. As a result, there are different consequences, essentially. A lot of what capitalism is and how money is judged is based upon supply and demand, what the need for it is, how it benefits, how many people it benefits. So these are all things, it's a whole different conversation. For the time, we can't go into that, but it's a nuanced question.
Can you tell me, I'd love to hear like the choices that you've made to get to where you are.
I've made a few quid of my photography. I spent about £1,000 on my equipment so far, my camera, my flash, my lenses, etc., my computer as well. And I've made a hell of a lot more on that in my life. The point is that I've paid X amount of money and made more out of it. The benefit for them, my clients, is that they get good photography, get good photos. And my benefit is I get money, which they then use to pay for things that I need and so on and so forth.
I think that's amazing, but I was talking about the choices you made as a baby.
Oh, I guess you could say I was at the mercy of my parents, but then we kind of all are.
Yeah.
So it depends how far back.
So you were born in what?
I was born in 95. London, 95, yeah.
Okay, so he's born in the capital city of one of the 5th richest country in the world, right? And then you went to a state school.
You know what? I actually had a mixed upbringing. I've been to state schools, I've been to private schools, and I've been homeschooled.
The area you're in, is it decent safety wise?
It's okay. It didn't used to be that way though, but it's okay now.
The choices you made in your latter life, when you had the capital, the age, and like that is amazing. But ultimately, those are a privilege. Some people don't have choices. Some people are born in single-parent or orphanage households.
As was I. Yeah.
As was I myself. Some people are born in communities where gang life is just life, where the idea of going to school is less popular or is not even like a common concept. Some people are born in creaking tenement buildings where there's cockroaches and everything. The light doesn't flick on and off. There's no Wi-Fi. They can't even study. Some people's choices aren't present, and it means that their life is predetermined towards certain outcomes. There's a whole school. If you can look at people in foster homes, and the percentage chance of them going to prison is like 90%.
It sounds like you're envious of these people, you know.
I am envious of these people.
So it's based,
no,
so
but
it's
I'm envious on behalf of the millions of young people who are born in working class houses that don't get the same privileges as these people.
Yeah, but that's
I'm happy being envious. If that's envy, that's fair.
You call it, it's okay, you can argue it's not fair. To deal with it, get over it.
Why?
Okay, what do you mean why? Do you think everyone's entitled to a certain level of...
Yes.
No, I don't know.
I believe based on your humanity, you deserve to be able to make the best out of your life.
Why do you think it is a good idea for society, socialism is a good idea for society, despite examples of it being ultimately a flawed and failed system such as in Venezuela.
We live in a flawed and failed system already. There's such record poverty. There's such record it's a bad country to start a business. It's a bad country for healthcare outcomes these days. Did you see that recently in the news, there was a woman that went 3 years being unnoticed because her disability benefits were cut. No one cared, the government doesn't care, they don't check up on you. Social care is in crisis. So many old and elderly and vulnerable people are being hurt and damaged in our crumbling care system. Lots of poor kids are not we're not primed to succeed in this country, so it's perpetuating generational inequality. The environment is on fire. If this is a good system, I'm scared.
I hear what you're saying, but a lot of it, from what I understand, comes from a lot of government intervention.
You think the government is the reason that people are being underpaid in the private sector then? So do you agree that the government should raise the minimum wage?
No, it depends what the minimum wage is. Chances are if you're doing something that's minimum wage, you're doing something that doesn't require a lot of skill. Why does a person who works in McDonald's deserve £15 an hour for standing behind a cash register, taking an order and flipping burgers? If you train a monkey, he could do it with the amount of training.
You believe in entrepreneurship, right? So that person that's working at McDonald's, maybe they're a mother of 2 kids, maybe they're 32 years old, right? Do you believe she should be able to start a business?
Yes.
So why don't you believe she should have the money from a working class job that is able to help her develop and have the capital so that she can eventually leave that dead-end job?
Because ultimately, the job that you're working has an objective value. It doesn't go above that. It's like we're saying, whatever you want, you should be able to get. That's just not how life is.
Henry Ford, right? One of the most famous capitalists, in history. He paid his workers so much more than was the other rate in the rest of America in the 50s at the time, because he wanted workers to be able to buy his cars. They were working on the car, so he thought it was fair that they'd be able to buy the car. And his logic was that it makes so much more sense for the business that if ordinary people could actually access what he was making.
Precisely.
That's a private sector individual. I believe extend that to the whole country. If we had a system where poor, working class, middle class families were everywhere, where everyone like you and me could buy a property, where everyone had the money that we were earning from
Henry Ford,
life.
Henry Ford, the capitalist, he was there to serve himself. He sold the cars to his employees.
Isn't that the point?
Right, but he's not going to sell a rival car to his employees, is he? He's not going to serve. He's not going to say, okay, let's buy shares in KFC, for example. Let's buy shares in this company.
But he did serve himself.
He served himself by selling his own property to his own employees.
So maybe we should have a government that serves the people.
I think that you have a very pure heart, but I would say that obviously throughout history, I look at human history and stuff, and socialism as a concept by itself can never actually work. I've seen it happen in so many societies that just crumbles every single time. Ultimately, if you don't have a backbone, if you don't give people an incentive to go out and work, the wealth that we're trying to redistribute has no value.
I'd say that what I've learned is similarly, you have a love for entrepreneurship, you have a love for the human imagination and human creativity. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I just don't feel that this system is anywhere near accomplishing that for people that look like you and me, from the sorts of backgrounds like you and me. If we want people like ordinary working class people, black, brown, Asian, from wherever in this country to succeed, we need a system that doesn't benefit the rich and constantly penalize the poor. We need a system that helps the poor be empowered to make decisions in their everyday life, whether it's government or in their workplace. And we need to strengthen the power that the people have, so that we don't lose what we already have and the gains that many have fought and died for in our society.